up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York, calling from the quarantine zone again, and this time I got Al of Ascent Like Wolves. Thank you so much for your time today, man. It's great to have you here.
Good to be here.
We have the brand new album Mystic Aura scheduled to come out very soon, and you released a couple of singles off of them, which is completely badass. But before we get into those singles, you just want to talk about like how the making of Mystic Auras was, like how the songwriting and the recording like came to be.
Sure. Uh, so we've been working on Mystic Auras for what seems like forever. We put out our EP Spirit Vessel sometime in the spring of 2018. I think it was the end of March. And since then, we did a little bit of touring, like in America and overseas too. And when we came back, we just kind of took just like a prolonged break from doing this stuff. I think it was just kind of wearing us down a little bit, which, it happens to bands. We've been a band since 2010, so we've been going hard at it for a while. I think everybody in our group just needed some time off to relax and just kind of get like our ducks in a row. But towards the end of that year, we slowly started working on music for the album. And I think the first song that we kind of worked on was Bloom. And every time we kind of release new albums, we kind of discuss like a direction that we want to go in and how we can evolve. Because I feel like we just never really want to do the same thing. Because for me, I feel like that's boring when I hear another album that's already been done before by the same band. You know what I mean? It's like, guys, like, it's been like 5 years and the sound is still kind of the same. You know what I mean? That kind of bums me out with bands sometimes. But for like our sake, though, I think we can just try to be more creative and think outside of the box. Like, what can we do differently on this next release?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, actually we have three guitar players and all of them wrote songs for the album. So it's not just crafted by one person.
Oh wow!
So
That's
it's pretty interesting for me to like work with different members of the band like that. Usually our member Jeff like writes most of the songs, but Kyle and Blake also brought some to the table for this one as well. So yeah, I think we started recording them in 2019, and then towards the end of 2019 we worked with producers Carson Slovak and Grant McFarland. They've done Polaris era, August Burns Red, like Moss to Flames, and they've done actually all of our releases previously. So they're kind of like the team formula at this point, to say the least.
It's really
So
cool.
yeah.
Do you feel that the first three singles that you released, Eastern Lights, Bloom, and Death Effect, could almost serve as like a clear representation of what this whole album is going to sound like, or is that just like the tip of the iceberg for?
I think it's funny because I feel like that's not what it sounds like, but those are the ones that we picked for singles. I think the record sounds more like probably Bloom, I think, is what most of the songs kind of sound in that atmosphere. I think all the tracks have that palm muted dotted eighth guitar layer over them, like some U2 Angels and Airwaves type guitar riffing in them all. And that's kind of like the element we really wanted to add to this album, I think, was to make it more like alternative. Because our previous release, Spirit Vessel, was in F sharp and it was a little heavier. So yeah, I would say the songs that are especially coming up. We have one next week coming out that I think Alt Press is putting out on Monday, and then we have a single dropping on the same day the album comes out called Telephone. And I would think those songs are more like alternative rock, more closer to Bloom than they are Death Effect or Eastern Lights.
Mm-hmm. But you've collaborated with you have an impressive roster of collaborative guests on here. You have JT from Era, you had Brian Willie from Currents, shout out to Brian, a good friend of mine. And then you also collaborated with Boca from Make Them Suffer, which that last album was killer. Did working with different vocalists, and you mentioned, having three guitar players also, write with the music and stuff, did that teach you new things as well?
Yeah, I've slowly been picking up on things here and there. One of my goals for this year is to actually get a new place, but I've been slowly collecting gear for myself to start self-recording more. So yeah, like the other dudes, they have like makeshift studios or little studios where we can craft pre-pros at. So for me, it's helped me pick up a little bit here and there, but working with the guest vocalists, it was just like an awesome experience. And going into the release, that's something that I wanted to do, was work with more people. And Mr. Gores is kind of about what drives people's desires in life. So I kind of wanted to pick vocalists that were all over the world. And it's funny that you mentioned Brian, because he was the last one we picked up kind of last minute. Our plans originally were to get Ken from Crossfade to do the vocal on that song.
From Japan?
Yeah.
Oh,
so
they're great.
So then all vocalists would have been from like different countries. But I've been, me and our guitarist Blake have been hanging out with Currents a lot in the last year. So I just asked him if he could do it really quickly. And he was like, yeah, I'll do it.
That's awesome. It's funny how things kind of like happen when you least expect them.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, we've been friends with JT for a couple of years, and we asked him, and he was definitely down to do it. And I think the only person that I was not really friends with was Buka. But I've been to a couple of their shows since she's been in the band, and we chit-chatted and on the internet and stuff. So I think I hit her up maybe like about a year ago. And yeah, she sent them over, and she was down to do it. Like their management approved it and everything. Awesome. So Matt from Novelists, that's a pretty funny one. We played a show with them about like 2 years ago, and he was really sick on tour, and I just bought him a bunch of cold medicine, and we've been good homies ever since that. So it's the little things that matter.
Right? Exactly.
Yeah.
That should have been the name of the album. It's the little things that matter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's like great to establish relationships with these people, though, more than anything, or just, musicians in general, and just kind of like this new service that's out called Featured X, which I'm actually a part of. But it's kind of like a website where you can just click and drag things in your cart. Like, oh yeah, I want a feature from this vocalist, this one. It's kind of like dynamic in a sense where everything's listed on there to pick from people to do guest vocals that you want. There's a lot of different artists like in our genre on there, but we acquired all these people well before that. So I think it's always interesting to see if people will even do it or not. And I think that website that just came out makes that kind of like easier in a sense, which is cool. But I think it also takes away from the fact that you can be more personal with people. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, you kind of want it to be like you want it to be very, very organic in a way. Like I feel like those are the best collaborative efforts in a way. You know what I mean? Like I think one of the best collaborations is when Howard Jones and Jesse Leach sang together on a Killswitch Engage song, because there's like a lot of
that was pretty cool.
Because there's like a lot of history, there's a lot of great stories of friendship and reconciliation and all that. So I think there's like more context when like I love what you said about Brian. Like that was kind of like a last minute thing, you weren't expecting it, but you go back with them, and he's a phenomenal vocalist. So how could you go wrong with that? So
yeah.
Do you feel like when you are singing, though, and collaborating with somebody, especially because you mentioned A Scent Like Wolves has 2 vocalists, like, do you feel like everybody has to kind of be in the same headspace or kind of like have a similar frame of mind in order to maybe make the collaboration sound, for lack of better words, consistent?
I think like it's interesting dynamic. The other vocalist, Nick, he's actually my brother.
Oh wow.
So for us to like write music together and shoot the shit back and forth and like argue about lyrics and stuff, it's kind of easy.
Yeah, you're required. You're required, like band confrontation members. That it's like required for that at that point.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, hey man, fuck you, I don't like your lyrics. No, like we just kind of it's interesting because sometimes we'll like write together for songs, and other times we'll just take one separately into a room, 2 different songs, and we'll just write it by ourselves and kind of see like what we come up with, and I guess whose melody is better.
Yeah.
Nick's lyrics are like always very like intricate and like Like the dude is like hella resourceful. um, so his lyrics are like typically sometimes cooler than mine, but I've been getting a lot better at like writing lately, so they're not as generic, especially like on these last couple of releases. But yeah, for guest vocalists to appear on our songs, usually we have like 90% of it done already, except their part is just missing when we shoot it over. So that they can listen to the full scale production and everything that's going on. And we just give them like a brief synopsis of what the song's about. And then they usually just decide if they want to do it or not. And I'm not a fan of giving people like melodies or like lyrics to sing. Like, oh, here's your part, just do it. I'd rather see like what they can come up with.
Yeah.
And I feel like that ties into what you're saying. That brings out a better song more organically if they feel good about it themselves and they can contribute like that. And to me, that's important. I would rather hear what they have to say compared to what I have to write, because like, why would I be hitting them up to do it anyway? You know what I mean?
Definitely, definitely. Vince from the Acacia Strain said that when he, he's collaborated with the Day to Remember and a lot of other bands, and it's like, like,
Yeah.
like if it's being too dictated, like it's not going to be like a guest spot anymore. It's just somebody else singing it. Do you feel like, but when it comes to like lyrics, did you often need to hear the music to come up with lyrics, or has there ever been a time where you had a concept or lyrics in mind and that could help influence the music itself?
Yeah, so yeah, sometimes I don't play like guitar that well, like super metal or anything like that. Seven strings, like I wouldn't say like I'm a beginner, but in a sense I am. I think I can play like more standard like rock songs and things of that nature. But that's how I kind of come up with melodies, and I prefer if there's music first, so then I feel like, if the song is like more completed that way, it gives me a better sense of what I should be doing in general. But sometimes I'll just be like walking down the street or out somewhere, or even in here on my phone, I'll be just humming a melody like, doo-doo-doo, doo-doo-doo, you know what I mean? Like just to remember it later on if I think it's cool. So, yeah, I guess it just all kind of depends, just where I'm at and what I'm thinking. I don't know.
Yeah. Have you ever had
Kind
like
of
the
a hard
best?
question.
Have you ever had like the best lyrics ever, but then they're always like one syllable over like every arrangement or something like that?
Yeah, that happens, but I think it's like easy to forget because having them on time and not over is more important. So I've definitely had situations where I think of something in my head, or it's like a guitar riff or something that I hear, or a melody, and then I forget to record it, and then like the next day I'll wake up and I completely forgot what it was.
Yeah.
But they say, if you can't remember it, it wasn't really that good. I don't believe that, but there's
Definitely.
only so many things I can remember.
Yeah, definitely. It's always like a memory game, especially I can only imagine how difficult it could be too if you have a lot of songs and you have to put a set list together and all that stuff. That's got to sound
Right.
like a living hell, right?
Yeah. Sometimes I think like maybe like a few times I've forgotten like lyrics live and stuff like that, and it's always a bummer. But I mean, I don't even know how many songs we have. I'd say like at least 50 by now or something. But um, I guess practice makes perfect.
Yeah. Do all your albums have kind of like a universal thing that tie them together in a way? Like because like Frigid Future was the last full length album to come out, right?
Uh, yeah, I think that it was.
And then you had the Spirit Vessel EP, and then
Mhm.
so like do you feel that like maybe there is kind of like a formula in the Ascent Like Wolves catalog where like maybe you kind of try to stick with, or do you try to maybe experiment or take a new approach to everything?
Oh yeah, I think. Well, there is and there isn't. The thing that we try to keep consistent is our artwork, and one of our longtime friends, his name's Corey Swope. He's been doing our artwork since we have been a band, since we first started. And I think originally he didn't do the cover for End Story Goes, but we made a reissue version and we put it out like a year ago or so. And he redid the cover for it, so it's in his own way. But we always tried to keep our album covers like kind of in his style. but all of our albums have concepts, and I always try to come up with cool names for them and think of an actual concept of it, and just instead of just like, oh, here's 10 songs, here's 10 new songs we made.
Yeah.
Like for instance, Frigid Future is kind of just about like us trying to break into the music industry more, and just everything just seems kind of more bleak than it did music from like decades ago. It seems much more easier to make a living off of it
Yeah.
and whatnot. And yes, that's mostly like what that album is about. And we kind of like tied in like a cold weather theme into it because of, you know, like being depressed from that. And we did some really cool things when we released that album. Like we got to go tour overseas for the first time and stuff. But Spirit Vessel is about the environment and political aspects and how we don't believe in religion and stuff like that, which we never really wrote about before. So Mystic Auras, I think, has a little bit of a tie of our personal lives into the songs, because that's something like we haven't really gotten a chance to talk about, like relationships and things of that nature. So yeah, and like I was saying before, the album kind of just like sees what drives people's desires, whether it's like, you know, money, relationships, tangible objects, things of that nature. So yeah, we try to like keep a theme for all of our albums, and I think that makes it more like, I guess, interesting for people to latch onto.
So it's fair to say that Mystic Auras is probably the most personal Ascent Like Wolves album, right?
Yeah, I would say so.
Was that like a preconceived idea? Because you mentioned like you were working on this material for since like 2019, which I can't believe was now 2 years ago. But like,
God, I know.
did you like go into the songwriting of that with that in mind, or did these songs change a lot over a span of time?
Yeah, I'm kind of crazy to them, I think, like the rest of the guys, because even before Spirit Vessel was out, I already had our artist Corey like drop the artwork for Mystic Auras. Like before it was even out, I already had like the template and everything for it, and I kind of sent it to them, and I kind of see like where they're at. Just I guess in the realm of ideas and what they think about it and stuff. Same thing for Spirit Vessel. Spirit Vessel was a cover that Corey actually drew in 2014, and I saw it in one of his sketchbooks. And this is before Frigid Future was even recorded. And I was like, I want that. I'll pay you for it right now. I'll use it later for an EP. And that's exactly what happened. And I already have Corey working on something new for like a new album cover already too, which to me, if I have ideas ahead of time, that's a good sign. And I wasn't having them until maybe like a couple months ago when we started releasing songs. Like I didn't have any ideas for the future. So I'm really glad that I did.
Yeah, definitely. Inspiration sometimes strikes at the most inconvenient or unexpected times.
For sure. I agree with that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I didn't know like what the songs would be about before we started recording them, but I kind of just discussed with Nick what we should do, and I showed him the cover, and I pretty much said like, yeah, you know, this would be a cool idea if we did this for this, and I explained like what the cover meant to me, which is what the album is about. So yeah, the rest is history, I guess.
Yeah.
So.
And that led me to my final question. Do you want the listener to sort of like be engaged in the themes? Because I think you have a great presentation element behind it, where you have kind of like an underlying concept, Frigid Future being about the music industry. You had like an EP that was a little bit more politically driven. Then you have something that's more personal. Do you try to maybe like engage the listener into the theme, being that you put so much work into the presentation, or do you want a listener to sort of take in their own conclusion from it?
I guess either or really, because I think, you know, like when I listen to the songs, I kind of draw my own conclusions as to like what they're about from some of my favorite bands, and sometimes when I go on Google and I'm like, okay, let me see what this is about, and then I read what it's about, and I'm like, oh, well, I didn't think it was about that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That happens sometimes, but yeah, you know, if people want to take away something different from the lyrics or the song, I think that's okay. but I think we try to present them in a way that's kind of already, I guess the word would be obvious to the listener what they would be about in a sense. Because I feel like, instead of like people asking me or interviewing me, I don't know if they would really know what the release would be about or in relation to unless they would look it up.
Yeah. So I feel like you're able to approach it from both kind of like a literal standpoint and a metaphorical standpoint as well.
Yeah, very true.
So before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time today. Really enjoyed this chat. Is there just anything else that you would like to promote for Ascent Like Wolves, like maybe like a live stream performance for the release of Mystic Auras, or anything else that you'd like to plug?
We wanted to do a live stream release. I just don't think that we really have like the resources for it right now as a band like ourselves. But yeah, Mystic Auras comes out February 19th, which I believe is just a little over a month away. And we do have some pre-order merch available for it as well. And I think in the near future, we could have some sort of like live stream show, probably in the spring or something like that, hopefully. So I think we were kind of hoping for tours to come back at this point, since we've had this recorded for like well over a year now. So, but yeah, Mystic Auras, February 19th. It's out on We Are Triumphant, and we look forward to everybody checking it out and listening to it. Thank you so much, Alex, for your time. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, it's been a real pleasure as well. I heard those singles and I was just like, I need to chat with this band. So thank you so much. Everybody, we are here with Ascent Like Wolves, Mystic Auras, coming out February 19th. This is Alex from Heavy New York, and we will see you next time.